Hey, Felipe and Eds, this is Jan Meredith, your instructor. Welcome to class.
Hey John, how's it going?
Good. How's it going with you?
Yeah, I'm pretty good, thanks, sir. Thanks for asking.
Now, where are you taking a class from, geography wise?
So I am actually, I admit, I actually just wanted to assume a refresher. I've done the course before, but I'm in Vancouver, Canada.
I'm sorry?
I'm in Vancouver, Canada.
Vancouver. Very nice.
Yeah. What about you?
I'm on the U.S. East Coast. The sun is going down. So I'm in Bedford, New Hampshire. In the state.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
So having worked for Cognos, as Odell has, we've been up to Canada many a time. So
Yeah. Any places you like?
although I like Toronto, I like Ottawa, I like Vancouver. The different slices, if you will, of Canada kind of reflect a little bit of different, character.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's pretty awesome. I'm a fake Canadian, so I
Okay.
actually think
Courtney, it's from London.
Uh-huh. There you go.
Tell a Londoner.
So you're Eds, you're from, is it ads or AIDS?
ads, yeah.
Sorry. Okay. And no, obviously no joke intended there. Now, where you originally from?
I lived in London, but I'm from near Leeds. You've ever heard of it?
Yeah.
Kind of in soccer.
Football.
Uh-huh. Very good. And Felipe, how about you? Where are you from?
Ottawa.
Ottawa. Very good.
Born here, raised everywhere.
Very good. Well, then you obviously know about Cognos.
Yes, Cognos. One of the
Both Odell and I used to work there for a number of years, and we were there when they got acquired by IBM. And
oh, is that right? Yeah, another disappointment. But anyway, I used to work for. I worked with Dell.
What's that?
I work with Dell.
Uh-huh.
And they closed their call center. We had about 7,000 employees.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Ouch.
But I still talk to Michael Copeland occasionally. I see him buying an ice cream on the corner, and
there you go.
I'll say hello.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you guys know we've got about 6-7 minutes before we get started.
Right.
So if you want to hang out, if you got any questions about yesterday's class, feel free to ask. Otherwise,
Yeah.
I'm going to get ready to, share my screen and all that fun stuff.
There was a question about the signing up. I'm working out of the home right now, and the lady there said to sign up for a temporary account, and then we could write the exam. And I sat in on that lecture again last night because I wasn't able to get the whole of it, and I sat into half of this afternoon, and then I was called away. So I'd like to get the beginning of this. But again, two things that were kind of bothering me. One was the download the slides, and then it was giving you a third-party download and asking you to pay a monthly something or other. So I couldn't download.
Well, because of that, we have moved the downloads to someplace that you and I can get, and nobody's going to ask us for any credit cards. So let me show you. Okay.
Yeah.
So if I share my screen here real quick.
Did you remember Francois, or whatever his name was, Plude from yesterday? He got quite upset about that.
Okay. I was not in yesterday's session. I got there a little late.
Okay.
I was just helping answer some questions. So
right.
If you and I log in here with some Training Plus Analyst 3-digit number, okay, any 3-digit number you want, okay, and then the password, of course, is learning22 ! Right. You and I can get in here, and then from here we can click on the House tab.
Okay.
Click on the Certification tab.
Okay.
And then under Certification, click on this Get Certified button. Now, we won't see, though we may see, certain options here or whatever, but what I'm looking for here is this recorded live training.
Okay.
And if you click on that recorded live training, and if you go into the fundamentals course, which was what you had yesterday, today's going to be search mastery. Tomorrow's going to be metric mastery. But if you click on the course that you want the information from, it starts a video that you can listen to that, again, you could attend the class virtually there if you wanted to. And then here are the slides for
good.
and here is the lab guide.
Right.
And it doesn't cost you that.
Okay.
Not
Well,
going to ask any credit cards. It's okay.
okay. It's not that I'm Welsh or anything, but
Hey, I
we're
am
Scottish.
Hey,
Scottish.
I live in New Hampshire. The state motto is live free or die. How we spend money. If a street sign falls off, it'll be years before it's replaced.
Okay.
The way it
Well,
is.
there you go.
Just for fun, sir, I will also put this information in the chat box to make it easy for you. But yeah, we'll answer that question and get anybody else who's got issues with that taken care of.
Okay.
Now, the other thing you said,
appreciate your
you
time.
had a problem signing up for a free trial account. Is that correct?
I just didn't attempt it. I understood
Okay.
in order to have an account and to get
Right.
to do the exams, you have to have an account because you sign in through the account.
Right.
on
You
the
want to make sure you're
training.
signed in with your name, not
Right.
train the analyst crazy number,
Right.
So here is the link for you to sign up for a free trial.
Okay.
That's also in the chat box.
All right. I'm writing that down.
No problem. You can click on it and fill it out if you want. Whatever works for you. So. All right. And I see a couple folks have joined us. Carlo and Jay, welcome. And Leslie, welcome to class.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And Michael, welcome, welcome. My question I'm asking everybody is, where are you taking the class from, geography-wise?
El Cerrito, California, just north of Berkeley.
Very nice.
Las Vegas, Nevada?
I'm sorry, we're in Nevada?
Las Vegas?
Vegas. I was just out there at AWS reInvent a couple months ago.
Nice.
And actually, I mentor STEM students, and one of my mentees is out there. He's doing a cybersecurity a degree program, so online. And so he and I got together with him and his wife, and I took him out to dinner and all that fun stuff. So
Very good.
yeah.
Well, feel free to take me out to dinner next time you're in town.
Hey, I'll have to do that. Absolutely. Absolutely. The best thing I can offer you, though, is we can see about getting you a New Breeds voucher. How about that?
That works for me.
For the near term, So anyway, let me kind of get my act together here, if there's such a thing as that. And let me close up some screens because I'm sharing my screens. I don't think you really care about my calendar anymore. This is my last event tonight. So you don't care about my email, and off to the races we go. So let's load up a slide there. And like I said, we'll get started here in a minute or so. So if anyone needs to make a last minute dash to grab some water, something to drink, something to eat, munch on while we're lecturing and stuff like that, you're welcome to do so. Otherwise, we'll get started here in about 2 minutes. We'll let the stragglers join. You know how that goes. All right. Also, if you have any questions from yesterday, you're welcome to ask them while we're waiting to get started. So, howdy. And again, if anyone wants to test out their mics, unmute themselves and say hi, you're certainly welcome to do so.
Hey, Jay Anderson here.
Hey, Jay, where are you taking the class from, sir?
I'm in Las Vegas.
Oh, you're the one from Vegas. Okay, gotcha. Sorry.
One of the two, yeah. There's Mike.
One of the two, okay.
Garcia's
Cool.
here too, somewhere.
Excellent. Well, welcome.
Thanks.
Just so you guys know, I'm on the East Coast. That's why the sun is going down out here. That's why I turned on my little light over my computer to focus on my face. So as I tell my students, if you see this guy begging off the highway, please give generously.
We're out on the East Coast.
I'm up in New Hampshire.
Oh, that's right. You said that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
heard that
fine.
earlier. Live free or die.
Yep. So, yeah, we've lived all over though. I used to, when I grew up and stuff, I was born in New York. When I was 5, we moved to St. Louis, is where I grew up and went to high school and all that fun stuff. And then when I was 18, I joined the Navy and went out to San Diego for a long time. and went up to Seattle for a bit. And that was fun. And went back to San Diego and deployed. And, years go by. Bought my first house out there, and then moved the family back to Missouri after I got out of the Navy. And now we moved out to New Hampshire here about 25 years ago, and we love it. So it's very nice. Olga, welcome to class.
Hi, John. How
Hi.
are you?
Danny, welcome to class.
Thank you.
So glad to have you guys. Again, the question I'm asking everybody is, where are you taking the class from geography-wise? I mean, I could let you all log in quietly and that sort of thing, but my obnoxious nature won't let that happen. So we want to hear from you guys on where you're taking the class from geography-wise. So where are you taking it? What city, state, that sort of thing. So if anyone wants to share that who hasn't already done so, I would appreciate it. You can certainly put it in the chat box. Thank you. That works too. So somebody's from New York City, which is fairly close to me. Somebody's down in Mexico. Excellent. Bay Area, Costa Rica. Very good. Very good. Minneapolis, Hawaii. Terrific. Yep. And James commented the St. Louis and the house. Yeah, that's actually, James, where I went and grew up or went to high school and stuff. So of course in St. Louis, you're tagged by where you went to high school, but that's another story. So that's where I spent most of my adolescence. Anyway, I think we've got a quorum here. And so what do you say we get started? Let me go ahead and turn on the recording. Oops, looks like we have been recording. So we're gonna have to edit all that stuff out. Anyway. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sumo Logic, Sumo Search Mastery class. My name is John Meredith, and I will be your instructor for this session. Like I said, I'm based out of my home here in Bedford, New Hampshire. So the sun is going down. So you'll see my room will get darker and darker here in a bit. I'll turn some lights on as we go. But I've been with Sumo a couple of years, a little over 2 years. And for my Canadian friends, as I mentioned, we used to work for Cognos, Odell and I. And I've worked as an IT manager, a programmer, a DBA, and all that fun stuff. And the thing I always loved doing is teaching. I actually started teaching way back in 1982 as a Navy instructor. So that's how I kind of got here. But otherwise, like I said, welcome to class. My only ask is that if you've got a question, please feel free to ask. Now, I'm also assisted and helped here by Odell. So Odell, you want to say hi, sir?
Absolutely. Thank you, John. And welcome again for those of you that joined me yesterday. This is the continuation on of your knowledge. If you didn't join us, this is a lot of information John has, so ask questions and make it fun. Enjoy.
Absolutely, make it fun. So I am going to turn off my streaming video here in a minute so we can get to save some bandwidth and that sort of thing, but we'll get this party started. So agenda, real quickly, we're going to go over a little bit of review material that Odell talked about yesterday, things like collectors, metadata tags, the 3 phases of Sumo Logic, that sort of thing. But basically, we're going to jump right into the labs. Okay, so we're going to jump right into the labs, and we're going to do this class pretty much by going through the labs. Now, I do want to mention to you 2 things. This class focuses on how to create queries for logs. That's what it focuses on. Tomorrow's class, for those of you who signed up, will deal with metric queries. So we got log queries today, metric queries tomorrow, just to kind of give you an idea of perspective. Typically, I'll go about an hour, maybe a little bit more than an hour, then I'll take a break, 5-minute break. Then we'll finish this up, hopefully within the hour, and then we'll get certified, and we'll give you an hour to take your certification exam. One thing I will warn you about the certification exam, there are some very interesting questions that are not necessarily covered these days by the material in this class. I just taught this class this morning, and I was amazed. I forgot how many questions there were that were not necessarily related to the material we're presenting. So as we come across those, I will try to point them out, okay? And again, as you all know, if you take the exam, you stick around with us and doing this hour, certification exam, we are right here to answer your questions and to help you out. So anyway, like I said, let me stop the streaming video there so we can save a little bandwidth. And again, as Odell probably mentioned to you yesterday, if you take the exam tonight and you pass it, you are welcome to take this URL, and we'll put the URL in there when we get around to the certifications. You can fill out this form, and we will email you or send you a $15 Uber Eats voucher. Also, for any of you who happen to be in India, we also have a relationship with Ziggy, and we will send you a Ziggy voucher if you're from India. So when you fill out the form, you get a choice which one you want to use, and that is how this works. One thing, it does take us a little bit of time to process it. We're going to verify your certification, and then we are, going to send out the voucher. So give us 48 hours, please. As you all probably know yesterday, and by the way, how many of you were not in yesterday's class, or how many of you not had a fundamentals or another class in Sumo Logic? If you would raise your hand if you have not, this is your first Sumo Logic class. If you would, just so I can get an idea of my audience here. And there's always going to be somebody. So only one person so far. Okay, fair enough. If you were in the class yesterday, we would have talked about how we can use Sumo Logic to look at our operational intelligence, right? We can see how our systems are behaving. Are they up? Are they down? Services failing? That sort of thing. We can also create dashboards to look at our security. Where are our users logging in from? What systems are they logging in from? That sort of thing. I can see my firewall traffic. I can see what activity is going on my network. And again, anything looks suspicious. Or maybe I'm looking at malware, tracking, all kinds of fun stuff that you can access and incorporate with your security. And then, of course, standard good old business intelligence. What are my customers purchasing? What are my customers interested in? Where do I have backlogs in shipping? If people are going to my website, what pages on my website are they interested in checking out? What's all the rage? Okay. If we recently promoted some new positions or how cool the company is, are we seeing an uptick from that? If we promoted something new within our company, some new product or something, are we seeing an uptick in that? So that business intelligence, of course, is very popular. And then at a very high level, global intelligence here, we can look at operational intelligence, security intelligence, and business intelligence, like I said, at a very high level. So for example, if we get an alert that AWS Guard Duty has detected an attack somewhere in the world, we can get a sense for those customers and stuff that might be affected by that attack based on where they're located and stuff like that. So it's a very high level thing. As far as the data, your data can run from various applications, microservices, could be on the cloud, could be on-prem, we don't care. Software as a service, maybe you're running Office 365 or Salesforce or heck, even Sumo, right? That's a software as a service. And then, of course, mobile devices and various other apps. You'll find that our system runs on AWS. That is our platform that we actually run on. We do support multi-tenancy. We are scalable. So as you need more resources, we'll assign them to you automatically. If you don't need those resources, we'll take them back. You'll find in our product, we've got a bit of machine learning. You may have seen the log reduce conversation we had yesterday, and we'll talk about that again today. Log reduce, log compare. We've got outlier functions, all kinds of neat advanced analytics, all kinds of machine learning stuff. For those of you who are programmers, we have a bunch of APIs, application programming interfaces, which basically allows you through various web service calls or whatever to install a collector or to create a user or create a role or whatever you need to do. Most important thing on the slide is probably this area right over here. We have acquired our SOC 2 compliance. We are PCI compliant. We are FedRAMP moderate authorized. We are HIPAA compliant. So we work with great rigor to maintain those certifications. And we have all of those various certifications. And we work, like I said, very hard to maintain them. So you're dealing with a very secure, and somebody has been vetted by outside agencies and given their stamp of approval. So, and then of course your role, I don't know what your role is, but I suspect it has something to do with using Sumo, which is why you're giving up your time to be with me tonight. Or today. So that's basically the 50,000 foot view. Again, those of you yesterday, the journey into Sumo Logic begins in 3 phases. It starts with collection. We need to bring the data into Sumo. So you'll find that we've got 2 types of collectors. Hosted collectors are hosted by Sumo Logic. They're maintained by Sumo Logic. You don't have to install anything. So if you're on the cloud, if you're on AWS or Azure or whatever, we already have a collector available there that you can use. You don't have to install anything or configure anything. Then, besides that hosted collector, we also have installed collectors. So if you do have some on-prem systems, we have a little lightweight Java-based application that you can use to basically take your log data, your metric data, it's going to encrypt it, compress it, and send it to Sumo. That's basically what the job of the collector is. Think of the collector as the highway under which how the data gets into Sumo. The sources underneath that are the information we put on that highway. You know, if you're running the AWS CloudTrail, then you want CloudTrail logs, fine, that's a source. You want your CloudWatch metrics, that's a source. You want your server metrics, that's a source. You know, whatever data, metrics and log data that you want to bring in, those are your various sources. So once that data is brought into Sumo, then we can write queries. And as I said today, our focus is going to be on log queries. Tomorrow will be on metric queries. And we'll see about the various operators and things that we can use. And as you probably saw in last night's class, we can build some sort of visualizations, charts, maps, things like that. Today, our focus in this class is really to focus more on this searching and analyzing, writing more queries, seeing how that stuff works out. And then, of course, we can take our charts or our visualizations, we can build them out to dashboards. We can also create alerts. So we will continue that conversation today as well. So that's the data flow. Any questions so far? Okay, I'll assume we're good to go. When you typically install and set up collectors, you can name that collector, right? You can reference that in your query by saying underscore collector equals, and then the name of that collector. Or if I want to reference a source, I can say underscore source equals, and then the name of that source, okay? This source category is in bold, which makes it a very important conversation. It's bold, it must be important. The source category is something you can define in your sources when you create them, and you can freely configure it with slashes. So you might have a prod environment, a dev environment, a QA environment. So in my source category for my prod environment, I'll start with prod. And then if my source is maybe my web servers, I might say prod / web server / and then the type of logs that I'm dealing with. Or I might say something like prod / and then my web server might be Apache, so I'll say Apache / and then I want my Apache access log, so I'll say Apache access. Or maybe I want my dev Apache access logs. So we can use the slashes in here to break this down to configure it so it makes logical sense as to what we're looking at. Typically, we break it down large to small. You'll find we have a lot more conversation here about how we name these source categories and stuff like that in the administration class where we typically create our sources. So that's basically that. You don't mind, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to log into Sumo Logic training environment. So I'm going to take this lovely information right here. I'm going to copy it in my chat box for you so you have it. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to fire up a Google Chrome or Firefox web browser, and I'd like you to go to service.sumologic.com. That's service.sumologic.com. And it automatically logs me in. So let me log out so I see what you see. Now, what I want you to do before you log in as training plus analyst and all that stuff, I want you to pick a 3-digit number, any 3-digit number you want. I am sure somebody has always wanted to be 007. So you want to grab 007, knock yourself out. Any 3-digit number. And I want you to log in as training plus analyst with that 3-digit number. You'll notice in the chat box, there's hashtags. Replace those hashtags with your 3-digit number. So just to pick on some things, I'm going to go ahead and grab here. I'm going to log in here if you don't mind, if I can actually type. There we go, maybe. I'm going to go out here and I could log in, of course, as 868, but I'm going to go ahead and grab 603. And you might ask, why 603? 603 is the area code for New Hampshire. So there you go. I'm going to grab 603 at sumologic.com. And again, don't forget training plus analyst with that 3-digit number at sumologic.com. And then the password is learning with a capital L 22 exclamation mark. Learning 22 exclamation mark. And if you do this correctly, you're rewarded when you click sign in. It's going to let you in. It's going to log you in. and you're in great shape. Now, I see many of you have anticipated the request, and I appreciate it. I would like you, if you haven't already done so, type in the 3-digit number that you're going to take and go ahead and type that in the chat box. Okay, most of you have already done that. So thank you for that. We're just making sure that you don't have duplicates and things like that. It's okay if 1 or 2 people share a number, but if like all 20 of you share a number, it could be a little bit problematic. So we want to avoid that. Okay. And then the other thing I want to know is, are you in? So are you able to log in? Now, Blessing, is there a question? You look like you raised your hand.
Yes, for those of us, I created yesterday. Am I supposed to create another one today again?
No, you can use the same number you used yesterday if you want.
Okay.
So you can use the same number.
So
Now,
that shows I'll be on the same platform, the same. I already have Apache and all of that.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. So you're going to be on the same training platform that you were yesterday. Now, you also have your own company platform. Many of you hopefully have a company platform, but that is something that we don't know what data you have. We don't know what's going on. So by using our training environment, we know what we have. We have all the data we need for the exercises. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So you're on the training environment here, and that's what we want you to log into. Later, we take the certification exam, we'll have you log in with your credentials on your company environment. But for right now, this will get us done. Okay. What I need you to do, some of you have indicated that you're in, and that's great. What I prefer is in your participants window, there's a place for you to raise your hand. So when you're all logged in, everything's working great, please raise your hand. Just quicker and easier for me. Now, more importantly, if you have problems, if you get credentials need to be verified or something like that, let us know. Odell and I can try to help you out. Okay. So again, we want to make sure everybody gets a chance to log in that wants to. I also realize that for some of you, you got your day job, you know, you're getting hassled at work, whatever. So maybe you don't want to do these exercises right now. I get it. I understand. Right now, I show 17, 18 people have logged in, 18 out of 33. So again, I don't want to leave anybody behind. And again, you can use the same number you used yesterday, and that's great. Now you can see the results you had from yesterday too, if you want. But you're going to go in here, and as Odell has put in here, and as I have put in here, and I'm going to put it in here again, there is the URL, service.sumologic.com. For the email, we want you to log in as Training Plus Analyst with a 3-digit number, any 3-digit number of your choosing, at sumologic.com. And then the password is learning22 exclamation mark. Now, as those of you probably are aware, that password changes every month. Okay. And I don't know what the password is going to be on the first Monday in April when we change it, but I'll tell you this. I'm going to put in here in the chat box my email address. So if you want to email me when we get around to the April and you want to know what that new password is, I'll share it with you. Okay. Our labs are very, very open. Okay. Yep. And it says here the labs look like the same ones from yesterday. They should be a little different this time, but we'll get there, Chad. Good question. All right. So I'm going to assume I've got everybody in that wants to be in. Again, if you have any problems, please let us know. I'm going to lower all the hands and we're going to go ahead and have a good time. Please show me the slides again. I assume you're asking, where can I get those slides? So Felipe, that's a great question. And I'm going to show you again. I'm going to show everybody again. So first issue. Gee, John, where's the recording of this class? Where's the recording of the class we had yesterday? Where are the slides? Because after all, the certification exam is open book, open notes, open slides, open documentation. So how do I get those slides? Well, it's real simple. When you're logged into Sumo, whether you're logged in as a training analyst or you're logged in as yourself, either one, okay? So you click on this home tab. You click on the certification tab under the home tab. And if you click on Get Certified, the blue Get Certified button, you'll see a series of panels. Now, you actually could see more panels than this, but for right now, this works. Because what we want to do here is in the recorded live training section, the recorded live training, if I click on that, I see a whole bunch of courses. In fact, I see all of our courses. And here, if I want to, I can click on Search Mastery Cert Jam, and I can register for free. Of course, you click on it, boom, you're registered. It's that easy. And then here is the recording for this class. So you can access that recording and you can watch it whenever you want. Those of you who have little children that are very fussy and don't sleep through the night, and you're up with a child feeding it, you want to watch a couple minutes of video, knock yourself out. We also have our student lab guide here that you could download. Now, I'm going to take you out to the lab guide in our documentation. It's the same thing, just a little easier. Earlier today, I tried this and I like our stuff on our website better. So, and then of course, here's the slides for this class. So this is where the information is that you can have for each and every one of our classes. For those of you who want to take another class but don't have time, maybe you want to take the admin class. Well, you can click on the admin course here, register if you want, listen to the lovely recording, download the slides, download the exercises, and go to town. Okay. Any questions about that? Now, there is one little thing I'm going to do. I'm logged in right now as training analyst 603. I'm actually going to log out. I'm going to log in with my credentials. Why? Because I'm an administrator, I have more rights. So if you get stuck, I can help you out. The way that you log yourself out if you need to, again, if this panel is not open, this is our navigation panel. See where it says Sumo Logic, and you got this hamburger menu or stack of pancakes or slices of cheese, whatever you want to call it. If you click on it, it opens up the navigation panel. Down here in the main menu, you will see the account that you're logged in with. If you click on that account, you can then sign out. So I'm going to sign out with that, and I'm going to change it. I'm going to log in with my credentials. Okay. Now, the reason I'm doing this, and I'm going to close some of the stuff up, you'll see these dashboards later because they're going to become test questions for you. So I'll come back and revisit those dashboards. But again, if I go home, I go to certification, because I'm logged in with my name now. If you logged into your company's Sumo Logic environment with your credentials, you'll see this become a Sumo Logic expert. And you can click on this, become a Sumo Logic expert. And here's the credentials. Here's where we keep the password. So when we do change the password, the day we change that password, we'll change this to reflect the new password. And these are where our self-paced courses are. So we have instructor-led courses where we can listen to the recordings, do the labs, all that stuff. We've got self-paced courses. Again, if you want the admin class, it's under general. Here it is, self-paced course. So you can do self-paced course. You can do instructor-led courses. We also have a bunch of micro learnings on YouTube that you can go out to YouTube and do a search for Sumo Logic. We got a bunch of 5 to 10 minute videos that you can watch on how to set up a collector or things like that. So I just want you to be aware of that. Also, since I'm logged in as me, as a named user, I can also get certified. We do not want you to either get certified or take a self-paced course with our training analyst accounts, because we want to know who's actually taking these courses so that we can follow up with you and make sure it's working good for you. Any questions about that? Okay. Now, for those of you with Odell yesterday, Odell had it really nice, because in our Sumo Logic environment, in our training environment, under the Home tab, under Learn, we had links for the fundamentals exam right here. They were right there. The labs were right there. Makes it really, really easy for anybody who teaches fundamentals. We also have the links for administration, which again makes it very easy. Where are the labs for Search Mastery? Where are the labs for the other courses? Well, the labs for all of our courses are in our documentation. Now, two ways or a couple ways to get the documentation. Again, if I open up my navigation panel, right, and I go to my main menu and I click on Help, I click on Documentation under Help, that takes me to our product documentation. Now, another thing you could do is you could open up a brand new tab, type in help.sumologic.com. That's help.sumologic.com. I think it's a pretty obvious URL. Now in here, I want to point out a couple of things for you, okay? First thing I want to point out is these are different chapters. Start here, send data, search, apps and integration, et cetera, et cetera. And if you're not sure what you're looking for, of course, you can do a search for what you're looking for. But in the search chapter, the third chapter, if you will, if I click on these three horizontal dots to expand my list here, I can see there's something here called search cheat sheets. And if you and I click on these search cheat sheets, you will see in here that there are 4 subsections. Some general search example cheat sheets, some grep to searching cheat sheets, IIS cheat sheets. And here's the one that I want, the log operators cheat sheet. And if you click on the log operators cheat sheet, and I'm going to actually take this URL, I'm going to copy it and put it into the chat box so you all have it in case you want it. This cheat sheet proceeds to talk to you about the various operators, the various parsing mechanisms we can use, aggregation operators, min, max, sum, count, all that good stuff, search operators, filter, geo lookup, all kinds of fun stuff. So we've got a long laundry list here of operators that we can use for log searches. It's all here. Now, somebody who is very wise in this class is going to say, gee, John, that's terrific. Do you have a PDF version? Well, yes, we do. If you go to the first paragraph here, at the very top, there is a PDF version of this. And you can print this off, and if you want, you can laminate it or whatever, and you can give it to your favorite coworkers as a holiday gift. Okay. So yes, we have these cheat sheets that you can print out. We have these cheat sheets on the web that you can access and all that fun stuff. So there you go. So that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. Another thing I wanted to talk to you about is where are our labs? Well, our labs are in the first chapter. Remember that little box that said start here? When you are in the documentation, it moves the table of contents over here to the left. And you can see I've got some indenting going on here to where I am. But if I go to the start here chapter, if I click on the start here chapter, and under start here, I can see that I've got, keyboard shortcuts. I've got quick start labs and tutorials. That's where we want to go, quick start labs and tutorials. And then I've got my hands-on labs for all of our courses. That's where this information is, okay? We want the hands-on labs for Search Mastery. So I'm going to click on the hands-on labs for Search Mastery. And I'm going to take this URL. And again, I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it in the chat box. So there's where our labs are. Now, the introduction lab is just how to access and get into Sumo Logic. So if I click on the introduction, it says how to access a training environment. Here's a PDF that gives you directions. That's wonderful. And then we can shoot on to lab 1. Now, there are 13 labs that we are going to go through, and that's how we're going to spend the next hour and a half going through these 13 labs. Okay, PDF version is not working. Okay, let me try that link just for fun here. See where it's trying to take you. The PDF version opened for me. Harjet, I'll have to look into that. I don't know. It should be opening for you too. Okay, Olga says it works for her. So anyway, thank you though. We'll definitely get it checked out. So I thank you for pointing that out. And we'll look into it. Now, one thing, if you all would, actually, let me make sure we're kind of caught up here. Okay, Michael says it works for him as well. Thank you. One thing, just so we're all on the same page, again, I'm going to take this link for lab 1 and I'm going to put it in the chat box. Okay. And so I'm going to put it in the chat box. Okay. Is there a is there a way to list all the source category source category categories configured in our account? Leslie, that's your question, correct? Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, there's an easy way to do it. I assume you want all the source categories. So the source categories is what you want. Easy way to do that, okay? And actually, Odell did that one yesterday. So if I go into Sumo Logic, okay, and if I create a new log query, and if I write a query that says, give me everything, which is really not a very good practical query, but for our purposes, it'll work. And if I run that, I'm going to get all the log messages for the last 15 minutes. And you can see I've got a boatload of log messages, 945,000 of them. And then if I type in another command, a pipe, and I say count by underscore source category, which is that metadata tag, this count by is going to create this aggregates tab. And then I'm going to see listed here out of these messages, these 920,000 messages, how many are from each of these sources. Now, is that the sort of thing, Leslie, you're looking for? Okay. Now, as a bonus round, Leslie, I'm going to add one more command to this. And I notice I type in a pipe, and I'm going to say sort by underscore count. Couple things. I say sort by underscore count. Why underscore count? When this is the word count, this count is an operator. It counts things. Think of a teacher in the classroom counting their students. 1, 2, 3, 4. The results of that count are stored as underscore count. And so I want to sort this by underscore count. And by the way, here's your first test question. If I don't specify an order, it will put it in descending order. So if I run this, you'll now see it counted this, and it's going to sort it in descending order. If you want to specify ascending, or if you want to change the order or specify the order, you can simply type in ASC or DESC to specify ascending or descending. If you don't specify it, though, it will be in descending order. Test question for you. So there you go, Leslie. Good to go. By the way, these are all on one line. As you can imagine, I could type in another pipe and type in some more command, and I can have the biggest, longest, ugliest run-on sentence here. And it's just lots of commands. We recommend that you put your pipes all on separate lines. Not that the system cares, but we humans care. This improves readability for us. And so that's what we recommend to do. In order to word wrap them, to carriage turn line feed them, it's either a shift enter or an alt enter on your keyboard. So again, for Leslie and anybody else who wants it, there's the code. Of course, this means you've got to use source category. If you don't use source category, not going to help you out. All right, so I think we answered that question. What do you say we get into lab number 1? And again, just make sure we're all on the same page. Let me take this URL for lab number 1. Let me paste it in the chat box so you all have it. By the way, I recommend if you're running Google Chrome to right click on this tab that is in, right click on it and pin it. By pinning it, it basically makes this shorter and puts it over to the side. I'm also going to pin my Sumo Logic environment, so it makes it very easy for me to switch back and forth. So that's a Google feature. It's not a Sumo Logic feature, okay? Pinning your tabs. All right, are we ready to get into lab 1? Are there any other questions before we start lab 1? I'm going to take that as a no. So we're going to start, and you're going to find in this class, we are going to do a lot of stuff with Apache access logs. So you're going to get so sick and tired of Apache access logs by the time we get to lab 13, but it is what it is, okay? So we're going to create a new query. How do we create a new query? Again, we go into Sumo Logic. We click on this new blue button. We click on log search. Today is going to be all log search. Tomorrow will be all metric, but today it's a log search. And then you can specify what you're looking for. And you notice that I put my cursor in here and click, I get a drop down list of things that I can search by. And I can start typing things in. And as I start typing things in, my limit list becomes a little bit smaller because my type ahead is filtering for that. And I can select, in this case, source category. And like I said, source category is one of our favorite categories to use. And then there's a source category. There's a source called labs/Apache/access. Now, as I start typing in Apache access, it finds my source category. Notice the case is different. And quite frankly, the case here is insensitive. It's case insensitive, okay? So I don't care if I type it in uppercase or lowercase, it'll still work. So to run this, I can either hit the enter key on my keyboard, or I can click on this blue icon in the right side there. So what am I seeing here? I'm seeing that I'm looking at my log messages for the last 15 minutes. We'll talk about changing that in just a little bit. I can see down here my date and time, my time zone. I can see my status. I'm done running this. I can see how long it took to run this query. And I can see the number of results. How many log messages did I get back? So here, my Apache access logs for the last 15 minutes, I got 6,851 log messages. Okay. In fact, for those of you who are like me, getting a little up there in years, it might be easy if we zoom in here a little bit. So let me go ahead and zoom in for those of us who have older eyes. And all I'm doing is just hitting the command plus sign on my keyboard, and it's zooming my screen up here to make it a little easier for me to see. And then here's my session ID. And the only reason you ever need a session ID is if you're trying to do something and tech support needs to see what you're seeing, then they may ask you for your session ID. Now up here is the histogram. And if I click on show, it shows me a histogram. If I'm looking at 15 minutes, I'm going to see 15 columns in here. The height of that column represents how many messages did I get in that 1 minute, okay? If I'm looking at, say, 60 minutes in here and change this to 60 minutes and rerun this, I'm going to see 60 columns. So the number of columns represents how many minutes or whatever you're running, okay? So sometimes that histogram can be helpful. In this case, it looks, pretty distributed. I'm not going to worry about it. It doesn't really help me. I'm going to hide this. And so there is that. Down here, I can see my messages that I got back. Over here, this section is called my field browser. My field browser. And we'll talk a lot more about the field browser in just a few minutes. Okay, so a quick little introduction there. Now, as I said here, if I run this for 60 minutes, I have 30,416 messages. Great. If I then proceed to type in here, I want to see my Apache access logs, and in those logs, if you will, I want to see any 304s. I can type in N304, and if I run this, you'll notice I'm now down to 4,366 messages. And every one of these messages has somewhere in it a 304. 304, 304, 304, 304. So we recommend as a best practice that when you first go in here and you specify your source category, if you want to filter your data so you're only seeing specific data, you can do that. For example, maybe I want to see 304, or maybe I also want to see 403s. Now, there's a problem here. I've got some Boolean expression. I've got an and here and or's there. I want these two or's dealt with first and given a priority first. So I'm going to put a parenthesis around these. So I want those two evaluated first, and then I want the results ended with my Apache access logs. And you'll notice I have about 4,603 messages. Some of these have 304s, some of them will have 403s in them if I look hard enough. Okay. Sailor asked a very good question. What does 304 and 403 signify? Okay. Well, first of all, I'm just looking for those numbers, right? I'm looking for those numbers. But in this location right here, or this location right there, a 304 means that we had a client error. A 403 is an authentication error. So these, when I do a web page and the web page works great, I get a status code back of 200. Means everything worked great. If I get something else back I'm sorry, excuse me. A 304 means I received it from cache. Okay. So that's what a 304 means. I received this not from going to the site and giving the information. I actually got it from the cache where you were using some sort of proxy, web server type thing. So I'm actually getting it from the cache of that machine rather than going to where you're asking me to go directly. So that's what 304 means. And a 403 is an authentication issue. But keep in mind that this can find 304 and 403 anywhere in these messages. It just so happens in this case, I'm going to see, these as a status code. If I look for something like, let's do this, 122. Let's go 192. If I look for 192, it's going to find that number anywhere it can. So it's going to find it maybe as an octet of an IP address. Right. So it's going to find that it's going to match this anywhere in that message it finds it. Whether I want it to be the status code or I want it to be something else, it will look through the messages, and it only shows me the messages that have this criteria. Okay, there you go. And Odell put a nice little handy cheat sheet for you with regards to status codes.
Can I put a not statement in there to exclude the .192s?
Yep. So you can do something like this. The problem is now what are you really asking for? You're asking for everything except 192. In fact, what you may want to do is say not 192 or 403, which is going to give me everything else, but that's really not filtering down, is it? But you can put an exclamation mark in there to not something if you want. Yes. So good question, a good statement.
No, I meant like specifically the .192 and still keep the 192 error codes.
Gotcha. So you want to just put a period in there or what? Match.
That period space, I guess.
Yep, period space. Okay, yeah. Okay. So you can do that, but now it's going to only find where I've got the first octet is 192. If I want it to be a middle octet, I could put a period in front of it, period at the end of it. If I want it to be the last octet, so you've got to structure this in such a way that it's going to give you what you want. So we good?
Well,
now, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I got an IP address that's coming in with the 404 inside of it.
Okay.
And I want to still pick up the 404 error codes, but I don't want to see the IP address.
We'll get to that. What you're going to want to do is you want to grab it by a specific field, in this case, status code. So hold that question. We'll get to that in just a few. We'll get to that in lab 3. Okay. So right now we're just looking for random numbers, specific numbers that we're typing in, but basically random numbers. Now, one thing, if I don't specify an operator between my source category and anything else that I want, for example, maybe I want to find the word Mozilla. I always have a hard time spelling Mozilla, so let me try to make sure I got this right. LLA. And there's only one Z. Okay. Mozilla, it's going to find me all the messages that have the word Mozilla in them. But notice that if I don't specify an AND operator, AND is implied. This is the same as this. It really is. They are equivalent. The other thing is sometimes you'll see it with quotes, double quotes. Sometimes you won't see it with double quotes. If there's no spaces in the text fields that you're looking for, you don't need the double quotes. If there are spaces in there, then you do need to put it inside double quotes. Treat it as a literal string. So just a couple things about just general searching here. If I want to do an OR, now what I'm looking at is my Apache access logs or any log that has the word Mozilla in it. And you'll notice I'm up to a nice large number of log messages here. And as I scroll through here, some of these are not Apache access, they're other web servers. And so when I use an OR, it's basically saying I want to see Apache access logs or anything that has the word Mozilla in it. So be very careful as far as whether you want an AND or an OR there. And again, if you don't specify it, it's going to default to and. Okay. So in lab 1, that's the first thing we're trying to show you here on lab 1, step 1 and step 2. Now in step 3, what we want to do is we want to look at our Apache access logs. By the way, it doesn't make a difference if and's uppercase or lowercase. And now you know I don't even need to put it in there. If I said the word error or check inside of parentheses, because I want that to be evaluated first. Error or check. Now with this check, I'm going to put a star at the end of it. That means I don't care what ends after CHEK. Could be checked in, checked out, whatever. When I run this, now I'm going to look at my Apache error logs, and in those logs, anything that has the word error or has the word CHEK with anything after it. Checked out, checked in. As you can see, I'm getting 490 of these little rascals. Okay. So this is how we can start to search and look around for things. And that's what we're trying to show you here. Gorgeous. By the way, this first line, this keyword and metadata line, like I said, is case insensitive. Case insensitive. Now, what they want me to do is instead of looking at my Apache access logs, they want me to look at my Apache error logs. Before I do that, I just want to show you something. In my Apache access logs, you'll notice that my IP address is listed first, the first part of the message. Okay. And by the way, you learned yesterday, many of you, that you could use a parse anchor to parse that field out. Okay, planting the seed for something here. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to change this to my Apache error logs. And I want to go back 45 minutes, not 60, not 30, not 15. So if I go up here and I click on this, I see I've got a choice, 15, 60, 3 hours, whatever. If I want something that's not listed here, I've got to actually type it in. The command is very simple. I want to go back, so that's a minus sign. I want to go back in history, right? I want to go back 45, number 4, number 5, and then I want to go back 45 minutes. M for minutes, H for hours, D for days. And now when I run this, it's going to show me my log results for the last 45 minutes. When I look at my Apache error logs, you'll notice that the IP address is not listed first. It's listed in some cases in my message. There's a reason why I'm pointing this out. Because later on, when we look at both of these logs together, because the IP addresses are in a different location, I can't use a parse anchor, but I can use other parsing mechanisms like a parse regular expression to pop out that IP address. So we'll talk about that in a few more steps. By the way, besides changing my time here or typing in whatever I want, under custom, I have a date picker. So I can say, you know what, I want to go from the 1st to the 17th, and I can change the time here to whatever I want. And it will basically put it in here and off to the races I run. So you can specify the time that you want. Now, for my friends up in Canada or friends in Europe or whatever, you do date formats and stuff a little bit differently. When we ingest the data, we decide what the format of those dates is going to be. So we define the sources is when we define the structure of those dates. But you and I can go into our navigation panel. And here in our navigation panel, if I go down to where your account is or my account is, and I open that up, and if I go into your preferences, here is where you and I can see what time zone we're going to use. So we can set it up for the same time zones. We're all keying out the same time, no matter where we are in the world. Or we can use our browser's default time zone. We'll pick it up from our browser settings. So we can specify that if you want to in your settings. You can also specify your format. So again, for those of you who might be in Europe or something like that, you can use day, day, month, month, year, year, year format. In the United States, we tend to use month, month, day, day, year, year, year format. So you can pick the format that you want. So just want to mention that one to you. Let me also shrink this down a little bit, make it a little easier for me to see everything. Okay, so that's the conversation about days, but there's two more things. If I click on here under reasons, I can see all of the recent date time frames I've used. So here's my date range, my -45M, my 60M, so forth and so on. I can see what I've recently used. Now, one other thing about dates. When I'm looking at the dates and I'm looking at these timestamps in my log messages, they come from your, as you ingest your data, we timestamp things, or you guys timestamp things. Your logs are timestamped. We read that timestamp. That's what we key on. So when I say I want to go back here, 60 minutes or whatever, it's going based on the timestamps, and it's showing me the last 60 minutes based on the data that I have. Now, here in this little gear icon, this little settings icon, you'll see there's two switches. One switch says use receipt time. And if I throw this switch and I run this, now instead of looking at my log stamps for the last 60 minutes, I'm looking at when Sumo Logic received it over the last 60 minutes. So receipt time is when we at Sumo receive this information. And if you look closely here, it says, I received this at 1950-20 and some microseconds there, 1950-10. So it took about 10 seconds for the time the log message was generated until we received it at Sumo Logic. That's not too bad. Again, we're looking at how much latency and how often we do that. And again, that's something that you set up when you set up your sources. How often do you want to grab those logs and send them? But when I use receipt time here, I am looking at when we at Sumo received it, not what the timestamp is in the logs. So that's what that's all about. The other auto parse mode we'll talk about in lab 3. Questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
When I clicked on the receipt time, yeah, mine did not pop up with receipt time. I still have just time.
You got to rerun the query. So throw the switch and rerun the query.
Okay.
So you got to throw the switch, and then you got to rerun the query. Otherwise, you won't see receipt time. And if you want to take it back again, you throw the switch, and you've got to rerun the query. Every time you make changes up here, you got to rerun the query.
Okay, thank you.
No, I appreciate it, because that's probably something that's going to happen to somebody else. So thank you for asking. All right. Any other questions? All right, we were talking about our Boolean logic, our ands and our ors, right? So I could, if I want to, look at my error logs along with or source category, if I could type here, equals labs/Apache/access. So I can actually look at both of these sources at the same time. I can see my Apache access logs. I can also, if I scroll down far enough, I can see my Apache error logs. Just jump to the end here and see if I'm lucky. There you go, my Apache error logs. So I can see the category names that these things have. Okay. And again, I'm looking at 38,000 messages. The reason this result thing comes important to me is I'm going to look at this between my queries to see if the numbers went up or down. And if they went up or down significantly, why? If I put a big filter in it, makes sense. They should have gone down. But if they suddenly go up, so I usually keep an eye on this result. It becomes very important to me, not the specific number, but how it trends as I change my query. And I think you'll agree that that's a good thing. Now, while we're over here, if I click on the word source, you'll see I have a pop-up menu that appears. I click on the word source, and it's saying that out of my 38,029 messages, 30,400 or 79.94% are from this source. 7,628 or 20% are from this source. So I can very quickly see how the breakdown is, right? I can see that basically 80%, 20%. I could go in here and I could look at other things. Maybe my source IP, I can click on this. This one has a value of 26, which means it has 26 different IP addresses. When I have more than 10 values, it only shows me the top 10 values, but I can see where my values here are coming from, which are the most important IP addresses I have. Here on my status code, we had that conversation about what's a 304 and what's a 200 and what's a 404. Here's where I can see my individual status codes. Now, these fields, for the most part, were created with something called a field extraction rule, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But I'll explain to you how that process works and all that and why we have them, because you'll see a test question or two on them. Let me get back to this lab. You'll notice everything starts off here with source category equals lab/Apache. Remember that wildcard symbol we used earlier? I should be able to do something like this, put a wildcard in there and get the same results. And I can. Absolutely. So now I'm seeing all of my Apache access logs. Here's my Apache error log, my Apache error log, my Apache error log. I scroll down, eventually I'll get to my Apache access logs. There we go, Apache access. And so I can see my different types. And again, I can click on source and it tells me where my information is coming from. So you can use that global wildcard. And that's what we're trying to show you here in steps 5 and step 6. Any questions so far? Okay, LiveTail. LiveTail is an interesting creature. LiveTail typically, in my mind, shouldn't be taught in this course. It should be taught in the admin class. But I can write a query here. I can go over here to these 3 dots, and I can click on LiveTail. And the first thing I want you to realize, only 10 people can run LiveTail in an environment at a time. So some of you have clicked on that. It may have said, sorry, there are 10 people using it, that sort of thing. What LiveTail does is it shows me data as it's being ingested into Sumo Logic. So who needs to see data as it's being ingested in Sumo Logic? Whoever sets up your collectors and your sources, they would probably want to run LiveTail. Okay. So LiveTail is something that an administrator would use, or whoever set up your collectors and sources, to make sure that data is coming in, right? You'll notice here LiveTail does work with a wildcard here at the end without any problems. It doesn't highlight anything, but if I wanted to, I can go in here and I can highlight things that I want to see. Let's try a 403. And so now if I click away, I can see various values. Sure, here in a minute, I'll get some of the 403 in it. That will show up. Let me make it 200. I get a lot of 200s. Okay. So we've got a highlight button there. And that's LiveTail. One thing about LiveTail, though, and this is a test question. So here we go. There's a command line interface of LiveTail. It's called CLI, command line interface. And so you're going to have a test question that says, which of the following is not a valid command line interface for LiveTail? The LiveTail command starts /LiveTail. It's a Unix command, /LiveTail. So when you look at your 4 choices, one of them will not start off with /LiveTail. That is the correct answer. That's the one that you want to select. Okay. So 3 of them will start off /LiveTail. The other one won't. That's the one you want. Okay. So there's your test question for that. All right. That takes care of lab number 1. Let's move on to lab number 2. We'll do lab number 2, then we'll take a break. Okay. Here in lab number 2, we can do something simple like look at our Apache logs, and then we can count by source, right? I mentioned earlier I could click on source and I can see that information. Well, what if I actually want to display it? I can add a new line. The way you add a new line is either a shift enter or an alt enter. And then when we add another command, we add a pipe, that vertical line. And in this case, I could say count by _ source. And when I run this, I now see that I've created this aggregates tab because of this count. If you're using a count or a min or a max or a sum, that's going to generate this aggregates tab. And then here in this aggregates tab, I had it count by my source. So out of my 38,573 messages, 30,849 are from this source, 7,731 are from this source. There you go. So you can count it by source if you want to, or count it however you want to. Now, earlier, I had made a bit of a deal about these two different types. I'm going to comment out this count by real quick. Just comment it out, add 2 forward slashes. 2 forward slashes, comments it out. Now, it's as though the command's not running. That second line is not running. As I mentioned in here, depending on what you're looking at, if I'm looking at my errors, in my errors, I will see my IP address. It's right after the word client. If I'm looking at my Apache access logs, my IP address is in the very front. So because these are different structured messages, and I want to be able to collect that IP address, here we go. There's my Apache access log. Here's the IP address. What I can't use is I can't use a parse anchor, but I can use a parse regular expression. Now, regular expressions are not a Sumo Logic creation. They were created by the World Wide Web Consortium. It's a standard that lets you match based on a pattern. And if you just did a search for regular expression syntax, you can learn up all about these wonderful regular expressions. And you can use these regular expressions to find out things like email addresses, IP addresses, and all of that fun stuff. So this is another one of those programming languages that you can use with web pages and various other things. Now, good news. We are going to take this line of code right here, and I can swipe over this line of code. And what this line of code is going to do for us, it's a parse regex, which means it's a parse regular expression. And it's going to look for a pattern. It's going to look for 1 to 3 digits, followed by a period, followed by 1 to 3 digits, followed by a period, followed by 1 to 3 digits, followed by a period, followed by 1 to 3 digits. And you and I know that format to be an IP address, right? 1 to 3 digits, followed by a period, followed by 1 to 3 digits, et cetera, et cetera. That is an IP address. So it's going to pull it out and it's going to call it IP address. So if I take this line of code and if I copy it, and if I add it in here, again, Shift Enter or Alt Enter to create a new line, and I paste that line in and I run it, it's automatically going to find all of my messages and it's going to pull out the IP address. So here's the IP address. There it is. Here's the IP address. There it is. In my Apache access, let's just jump on the next page. There we go. Here's my Apache access. Here's my IP address. And there it is. So regardless of where it is in the message, it went through the message and it found it. And that's the beauty of a parse regex. It doesn't care where it is in the message. It's not anchored to anything like a parse anchor is. And then if I want to, I can add another command and say, I want to count by the field name of IP underscore address. And so now what it's going to do is going to create this aggregates tab because of this count. And it's telling me out of my 33,992 messages that 865 are this IP address, 1,300 are this IP address, 1,758 are this IP address. And of course, I could sort this if I wanted to. By the way, instead of sorting it with a command, I can also go up here and click on this count and I can sort it either ascending or descending. So just to make it easy. Okay. Leslie asked an excellent question. What if there's more than one IP address in a message? Outstanding question. We're going to get to it in just a little bit. going to use the multi command, Leslie, is the answer to your question. But we'll get there. So great question, great lead in. Okay. All right. So we can count by IP address, and then if I want to, here I can even filter out. We're based on a specific count. So let me tell you what. Let me do this. Let me add my pipe, and I want to say where underscore count is greater than 1,000. 1,000, John, those are zeros. There we go. Found the zeros on the keyboard. Yay me. So now it gets rid of all those other numbers, and all I see are numbers that are greater than 1,000. Okay. Maybe I want numbers greater than 2,000. Count is greater than 2,000. I can certainly do that. Okay. And then if I want to, here I can create a pie chart or a bar chart or whatever kind of chart I want. Good questions. And that pretty much takes care of that. One thing about lab 2 here on step 4, it's trying to tell you and show you that you can have different types of parsing mechanisms in the same query. So in my query, I can do a parse regex and a parse anchor and a parse JSON all in the same query, as long as the formats support what I want to do. So you can have different parsing types in the same query. Okay. Any questions on lab 2? Well, what do you say we take a 5-minute break, folks? Open up a new tab here, turn on my 5-minute timer. When this timer gets down to 0, I'd appreciate if you're all back. So please take a break, and I'll see you back here in about 4 minutes and 53 seconds. Thanks.
I have a question.
Sure.
Yes, just like we've sorted the IP address and their total bytes to see the size, is it possible for me to know to determine the content of this bytes, just because saying that, oh, this is heavy, this is consuming more bandwidth, what is this particular IP address sending over that is consuming this bandwidth?
Okay, here's my question to you. How can I know? I mean, if you want to sort by IP addresses or look them up and see where they're coming from, but the trick is, how do you know which is taking up more bandwidth? You know, I assume you're making the assumption that if it's farther away, it must be taking more bandwidth. Or if it's got more requests, it's taking more bandwidth. So if you look at the count, if you're looking at a high count volume, that may take up more bandwidth. But if it's a farther distance, and then the question is, how do we get that distance? And we'll see that in this class. But again, how do you determine what criteria do you use that says I'm taking more bandwidth? And that's something you got to figure out.
Okay.
What is the definition of that? So whether it's the count of those, the more frequently the IP address is used, then obviously taking up bandwidth, or maybe it's the distance of where the heck they are. So, and we'll show you some of that in this class. So
Okay.
I didn't really answer your question, but I did try to answer your question. We got to determine how we determine what bandwidth is and where bandwidth is being used.
Okay.
All right. So any other questions, ladies and gentlemen, before we get started? Okay. I know somebody specifically wanted to be able to look for a specific like status code, stuff like that. We're going to get to that.
I had a question.
And somebody else asked about the multi-option. Yes, sir.
Yes, you did a little magic with the date thing before, and
Yep.
I blinked and I missed what you were doing. How did you get the date format again?
That was in your preferences. So if I go in here and you open up the navigation panel, and if you click on where your name is down here, or training associates, whatever, go into there, there's an option called preferences. And here is where some settings down here are where you control how you do your date formatting.
Okay, it didn't look like that when you did it, but I guess that works.
Okay. Well, that's one. And then the other thing is, when you're doing a query up here, you can specify, by typing in minus and then whatever value you want, and M for minutes, D for days, H for hours. You can do it that way. And then there's also the switch here for receipt time, changing the time from the time stamp that's in the logs versus the time that we receive it at Sumo.
Now, what I seen you did was you choose from a list of different types of date formats.
That would have been in preferences, I believe. These preferences right there.
Yeah, it seemed like you did it from up there by the stopwatch.
I don't think so, but
Like I said, I looked to the left, I looked back, you were selected, and
I do apologize. I'm so used to doing this. I do it fairly quickly. So yeah, feel free to slow me up and call me out on that. Okay. All right. The other thing you can do is you go back and watch the videos on these again, and because we typically talk about that as a in this class. That's where we teach this. Okay. All right. So let's move on to lab 3. Now, one thing about lab 3 is it's a lot of dissimilar conversations. So here's where I'll get into the multi, here's where I'll get into the status code, here's where I'll get into a wide variety of things, okay? So the first thing I want to introduce you to is that normally, when I look at data, and I go into data and I look at a specific source category. So I'm going to type in here source category, and I'm going to grab a source category called my snort logs. Now, my snort logs right now is not important. Okay, what they are is they're a security appliance that lets me see if I'm under some sort of attack. What is important right now is look at my field browser. My field browser has has time here, and then my message, and then I have these basic built-in metadata fields that I can select. Okay. Now, the problem is when I looked at, say, this one, I got all these fields. Where did all these fields come from? Well, these fields in the field browser come from one of two places. And this is a test question. They can either come from something called a field extraction rule, or they can come if it's a JSON log. So let's take field extraction rules first. When your administrator or whoever sets up your sources and the data that they bring in, they can go in here to manage data. They can go in here to logs. This is in your main menu. And up here, there's something called field extraction rules. And when I click on a field extraction rule, or if I want to add a new rule, I'm going to show you a rule here, this FER demo. If I open it up and edit it, you'll see that the way this rule is written is when I ingest data from this source, I am going to pre-parse, do this parse regex. I'm going to parse out something called src IP. And I'm also going to parse out using regex these other fields. And so this is going to generate for us these fields that I will see in my field browser. You'll notice one of them is a field called status code. So somebody asked, well, how can I see a 200 in a status code not anywhere in my message? Well, you can use this field if it exists in your query. So let me go back here, and this is not on the lab, so let me kind of deviate here a little bit. So bear with me, but it's a good question. So if I go in here and I look at my source category of labs/Apache/access, and I run this, I don't care if it's 15 minutes, 60 minutes, don't really care. Down here, you see there is this field called status code. Now I can click on this and it shows me my available status codes as a pop-up. I can also, if I want to check mark, fill in the check mark, and now I'm seeing the status code people field pulled out. And so I can see all my various status code. I've got a lot of 200s, okay? But there are other status codes in here, 403s, 304s, whatever. But in my query, I can say, and, or not have that in there at all, status code equals 304. And so now it's only going to show me those status codes that have a 304, down to about 1,100 messages. And I only see those that have status codes of 304. So you can use these field browser names in your query. So hopefully that answers the question that was asked. You know, the first question was asked about the start of a query, how to look for a specific field. But those fields have got to be named. Those fields are not named, it's not going to work. Another little thing, when I click on my ellipses and I take this and bring this into LiveTail, it's going to puke. It's going to throw an error. Why? Because remember, I'm looking at data as it's being ingested into Sumo Logic. I have not done the field extraction rule to create this field yet. It has no idea what status code 304 status code is. If I get rid of it and the equal sign and I run this, it'll run fine. But field extraction rule fields do not work in LiveTail. So hopefully that answers that question. All right. So field extraction rules can create some of these fields. That's where they can come from. Okay. Field extraction rules. Another place they can come from is if I encounter a log that's in JSON format. Let me give you an example. I'm going to go out here and I'm going to again look for source category, and I'm going to look for a JSON log. So I'm going to go to lab/AWS/CloudTrail, because I know that CloudTrail logs are in JSON. And if I run this, you'll see, yep, they're in JSON. There's a little button that says expand JSON here. I can expand all my fields. And I see I've got key value pairs. Here's my field, here's my value, my field, my value, my field, my value, my field, my value. And in Sumo Logic recently, like about 9 months ago, maybe a year ago now, we set it up so that when we see a JSON log, we automatically add all of these fields, not only these fields, but the fields that are in the subfields. We add all of this into our field browser. unless I click on the gear here and I turn this auto parse mode off. If I put my cursor over that little I, it says when enabled, automatically runs field extractions on your JSON. If I click this off and I rerun this query, all of those fields are going to go away. And I can't, as somebody asked me earlier, is there a practical reason why you want to do that? Not that I'm aware of. Why would I want to lose functionality? But that's what that switch does. So you'll see fields in your field, you'll see fields in your field browser. Either A, they're part of your field extraction rules. B, they're part of JSON logs. Or also, if you write a parse statement, you will see them in here as well. So for example, if I were to, let me just do something crazy here, right click on this, parse selected key, I'm going to give it a really funky name as AWS my region. Okay. What that will do is that will parse this out and that will add that field extraction rule in here as well. Oh, I'm sorry. It did, it put it right up here. So let me deselect it. So it's there, it is right there. And again, I can display it. So these are how fields get created in there. I either parse the field out, JSON logs, or field extraction rules. And again, unless you're an administrator or setting up data, you probably don't have to worry about that. We teach field extraction rules and stuff like that in the administration class. So here in lab 3, it talks about this dynamic parsing mode, which is what that JSON stuff is all about. That's how those fields got there. And as I said, you can click on the field name itself and a pop-up will appear, or you can check mark it and it will add it to your list of fields there. So any questions about the fields and the field browser and how that works? Okay. Next thing we want to talk about here is no drop, the no drop option. So if you don't mind here, I'm going to look at my Apache error log. And here in my error logs, you'll notice that I have, here's my little client IP. Now, here's one of those cases where I want to look at my results. Right now, my results say approximately 1,880. If I want to parse out this IP address using an parse anchor, those of you may recall from yesterday, I have to anchor on something. So I'm going to anchor on this bracket. That's my start anchor. I'm going to swipe over. I'm going to end anchoring on the end bracket. So these anchors are the thing that we're going to look for. We're going to look for a bracket and then an end bracket. And then in order to do this parse anchor, I highlight, I swiped over that stuff. I right click on this. I say parse selected text. And then what I want is I want to extract out this field, this IP address. So I'm going to swipe over this IP address, avoiding any leading or trailing spaces. I'm going to click to extract this value. It's going to replace that value with a star. And then I'm going to go in here and I'm going to give this thing a name. I can call it client IP, IP address, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to call that field. Just can't put spaces in the field name. When I click submit, it writes my code for me. Now, here's the part that's real interesting. When I run this, before I run this, right now, remember my results here are 1880. When I run this, not only did it come out and extract out my IP addresses, but it also reduced significantly the number of messages. Why? Because when I use a parse command, whenever I use a parse command, not only will it parse out and extract out the field and make a column for it, but it also acts as a filter. And anywhere I don't have something that matches this criteria, it drops it, it deletes it, gets rid of it. So if you're doing any sort of parsing and you're getting unpredictable results, we recommend that to troubleshoot this, and this is a test question, you want to add the no drop switch. If I add the no drop switch to my parse statement, now I won't delete any of the messages. Now I'm back to my original 1880 or whatever. For the last 15 minutes, I got 1769. But Now I can see the messages that maybe I deleted, the ones without the IP address. So no drop prevents you or I from deleting something that we may not have wanted to delete. Now, maybe we did, maybe we didn't. Okay, that's why you choose whether to use the no drop or not. But if you get unpredictable results when parsing, we recommend that you add the no drop statement in there to clean that up. Okay. And that's what we're talking about here in step 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. Okay. That's basically what we're doing is we're adding these no drop statements so that we can see the actual message. Now, what if we parse out a field and we want to parse it farther? So let me take these 2 lines of code, if you don't mind. Let me copy them. Let me go back in here. Let me create a new log query. We paste them in. What I'm looking at is I'm looking at my GitHub. For those of you who are not familiar with GitHub, it's a code repository. And I'm looking for my GitHub log with any message that has the word committer in it. Then I'm going to do a parse anchor to parse out the email address that's in there. So when I run this, there is an email address. Scroll down to the next message. Oops, excuse me. There's another email address, and so forth and so on. Now, once you've parsed a field, if you want to parse it farther, then you are going to use the parse field equals command. So again, I'm going to go in here and type in a pipe, new command. Command is parse space field equals, and then what is the field I'm going to parse again? Well, I'm going to take this email and I want to break it down even farther. So parse field equals email in this case. Then I'm going to type in my string. What's the structure of my email look like? It has a field. There's my wild card there. Field there. Then I've got an @ sign. Then I've got a field there. And what I want to do is I'm going to type in the word as. And my first star, we all probably know as the username or user. And then the second field is my domain name. And so I'm basically saying I want to parse this email address even further, break it down by my user and by my domain. So now I'm seeing here's my domain, here's my email, here's my username. There's the email address. This first part in front of the @ sign is my username. The part after the @ sign is my domain name. Now, I don't know if you realize it or not, but these things are listed down here alphabetically. D comes before E, which comes before U. If you want to change the order of that, the command that you use is the fields command. So pipe, F-I-E-L-D-S, F-I-E-L-D-S. There we go. Let's try that again with feeling. Jeepers, can't type today. And then what order do I want these in? Well, guess what? I want user first, then I want domain, then I want email. So you can use the fields command to change the order if you want to. Now I've got it in user, their domain, their email. So I wanted you to be aware. But the real purpose of this exercise is if you want to parse a field that's been parsed already, you can use the parse field command. And that's basically what we're doing here in step 6 and 7. All right. Now we get to somebody's favorite question here, the multi command. So I'm going to create a new log search. Again, I'm going to go visit my friend, the snort logs. So labs/snort. And you'll notice that when I look at my snort logs, if you look closely, there's actually 2 IP addresses in here. There's an IP address, there is a port, there is another IP address, and there is another port. Now, if I were to parse out using a regex expression, parse out my IP address, it's only going to grab the first message that it matches. So here's my parse regex command. We saw it earlier. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it in here. Okay, I'm going to run it. And what you'll notice is, by default, if I have an IP address, I go through the message, I find the first IP address, There it is. I match it. I extract it. We're done. I do not evaluate and look for other IP addresses. And as somebody asked before, what if there's more than one address? If you want to catch all the instances of them, you are going to append the multi command, M-U-L-T-I. Now, one thing I want to make sure you're aware of with the multi command. Right now, I have about 1,394 messages in the last 15 minutes from my snort log. When I add the multi command and I run this, you're going to see that your messages are basically going to double. And the reason that they're going to double is because it went through the first message and says, oh, I see two patterns that match. So it's going to take this first message and it's going to duplicate it. Then it's going to extract out the first IP address here. Then it's going to go to the second message. It's going to extract out the second IP address here. Then it's going to go to the next message. Oh, I see there's two IP addresses in there. I'm going to duplicate that message. First one, second one. That's why this number gets doubled. Now, does that number care? Do you care about that number? Is that going to affect your bill with Sumo Logic? No, it's not. Okay. We charge you by what you ingest, not by what you query. The multi-command will not cost you any money. Okay. That answers somebody questions about what if I've got multiple occurrences of something I want to match. You simply append the multi-command. All right, and that's parse multi, step 8 there on lab number 3. Then the last thing I talk about here is the field extraction rules and how you can use the field names if you want to in your query to filter them. And again, that was one of somebody's first questions that they asked earlier this evening. Okay, this evening for me, maybe this morning for you, I don't know, but that's basically what that's doing. And that takes care of lab number 3. Good news. All the labs from here on out are simple task things. So here in lab number 4, we're going to talk about conditional operators. And I'm going to grab all this code up here and I'm going to copy this code. And I'm going to paste this code into a new log search. Just paste it in. Now, as most of you know, or probably some of you know, I can comment out a single line by typing in 2 forward slashes. I can go up the next line, 2 forward slashes. But if I want to type out a series of lines, what you can do is you can put your cursor up here in the query area. If you're on a Windows keyboard, hold down the Alt key. If you're on a Mac keyboard, hold down the Option key. Your cursor will change to a plus sign. Put your cursor in front of the pipes and drag a line down. Using your mouse, drag a line down. You'll see you've got this little blinking line. Whatever you type is going to go across those entire lines. So if I type in 2 forward slashes, that's a comment. I like 2 forward slashes in a space, just makes it a little more readable for me. Still, they're commented out. So your choice. That's how I can comment out a whole series of lines. Now, this first line, again, I'm going to go out to my Apache Access logs and grab my data. This first line here, the second line is basically a parse anchor. It's going to parse out my status code. So again, it's going to go out here and extract out my status code. Now, I'm surprised somebody hasn't asked yet. Well, gee, John, I mean, you told us earlier that in our field browser that there's this status code down here. Why don't they just use it? Why don't they, why don't we just check mark it? Well, we can't assume that you always have field extraction rules or whatever. So we ignore these. We always parse out the fields that we want because we don't know what you might have in your environment. But if it's there, yes, you can check mark it and be done with it. Okay. Now, this next line is an if statement. And the way it reads, it's going to create a field called successes. And it's going to look and see if status code is equal to 200. So that's the condition. If this is true, then I'm going to put a 1 there. If it's not true, I'm going to put a 0 there. So what it's going to do is create a column called successes. If my status code is equal to 200, I'll put a 1 there, else I'll put a 0 there. And so when I run this, status code of 200, status success equals 1. If I jump to the end, let's try to go back here a little ways so I can see There we go. Maybe I've got something else here I can look at. 401. 401, I got a value of success is equal to 0. Okay. So that's basically how that works. Okay. So Daniel asked a question here. It says, if an element has already been parsed out, it will not let you parse it again. Actually, you can use the parse field equals command, Daniel, for the previous lab that we talked about. That's how you can parse it out some more if you want to. Okay. Now, again, what I'm doing is now I'm looking for a status code of equal to 404. And by the way, these are pretty simple. You know, look, if it's a 404, I'm going to put a 1 there. Also, I'm going to put a 0 there. But I could weight these, right? I could have and say, instead of 1, I could put a 2 there. And then when I count or sum them up, the number here would have twice the weight as a single value of 200. So you can change your numbers to reflect weight if you want to. You know, what their effective cost might be, right? Losing an employee is going to be higher, far more cost than an employee who doesn't make their probationary status, because I've got a lot of time and money and knowledge invested in that employee I'm losing, right? So something to consider. You can weight those things if you want to. And then finally, what this is going to do, so I've got a column called successes, a column called client errors, and anywhere I've got a 404, I'll put a 1 in client errors, okay? So if I find a 404 here, somewhere in here, I will see my 1 in client errors, okay? And then I want to do a sum of those. Now, whether you use an operator like sum, count, min, max, whatever, anytime you use one of those aggregation operators, you're going to get an aggregates tab. And what it did is it summed up all my 1s for my successes. And I'm going to call this success count. So success count, I have 4,895, status code of 200. And then here I've summed my client errors. I'm going to call it client error count. I have 204 of these 404s. So I can sum them up if I want to. Questions? One other little thing here with this lab 4, like I said, here we're testing for equality, right? If this equals, I can also do a string match on it. So I can use the matches operator. Matches is going to do a string operation on it. So if status code starts with basically a 4, I don't care what it ends with, I'm going to put a 1 in this client error. So it could be 401, 402, 403, 404. Quite frankly, it could be 4,623,314 because it starts with a 4. Okay, so just be cognizant of that. But your status codes will always be 3 digits anyway. But you can do a string match or you can do an equality statement. Any questions? Giving you a lot of food for thought so far. I'm sure right now your heads are probably spinning a little bit. So I'm sorry about that, but we've got a few more to talk about.
I have a general question.
Sure.
When you're parsing all these like statistics, metadata, and these logs and all that, how do we know that the data is accurate?
One of the things you're going to have to do is do some testing to make sure the data is accurate. Take a small sample size, double check it. But I mean, as far as the math and all that stuff in our product, that's all sound. So when we sum things together, we count things together, that's all fine. But obviously making sure the logic in your queries is correct, you got to take a small sample size and validate it. And then you can obviously go for a larger sample size.
Got it.
So I can't give you a magic pill that says, oh, it's all,
Yeah.
As when I was in the Navy, I used to have an XO that used to beat on me mercilessly that you get what you inspect, not what you expect. And this is that situation where you need to inspect it to make sure it's proper and it's correct. Got it.
Yeah, because I was just thinking from the perspective of like on the other end of observability with the data warehouse, your BI tools, your data lake, as the data is flowing through all of that. And then like you have data analysts serving like broken dashboards to their stakeholders. Right. No, absolutely. You've got to go through some sort of validation process. Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, creating these dashboards and all that stuff, that's fine. It's checking them, it's validating. That typically takes 3 times longer than the creation process, probably 4 times longer than the creation process. So, again, hope that's part of your company's process for this.
But once you do it, you can pretty well be assured that you're in good shape. Your confidence factor should be high.
Absolutely. Thank you.
No problem. All right. Before I get into lab 5, there's one thing I wanted to show you. You know, if you're like me, sometimes I might want to close these tabs up. I got a bunch of tabs open. And of course, I can close them one at a time. That's kind of boring. But if you grab the 3 vertical dots on any of these tabs, you'll see you have an option to close all tabs. And that gets rid of all the tabs. Now, no sooner will you close all the tabs than you will go, oh, crud. I really meant to keep one of these things open. Well, if you go into new and log search, and over here on the right, if you click on that, you'll see that as long as you've had this web session open, we've been keeping track of all of your queries for you. And so you can go back to any of the queries that you've had in this web session. Now you close your browser, this session gets ended, these get cleared out. But here are all the queries that we've created. And we can go back and select one of them if we want to. Not one of my best works there, so let's grab something a little better. There you go. So I wanted you to be aware of that. That's my little trick for you today. Now, let's talk a little bit about a subquery. And let me set up the story here, right? We have our Apache access logs. We have our Apache error logs. Our error logs show us when there's errors. Our Apache access log shows us what people are trying to access. Wouldn't it be nice if we could go through our Apache error logs, find somebody who's trying to hack in or play in or do something bad and evil, and then we want to see what they've been trying to access in our access logs? That's a use case for using a subquery. A subquery runs first, and then it applies it to the parent query. And so what we're going to have here is we're going to bring 2 queries together. I'm going to create a subquery out of one of them. So first of all, let's start with our parent query. Here's our code for a parent query. And I'm going to paste it in, and I'm going to run it. And you will notice that all of the IP addresses here are different. They are. I am looking at my Apache access logs for the last 15 minutes, period. Now my subquery looks like this. And I'm going to go ahead and copy this code. And I'm going to paste it into a new log search. And let me show you what's going on. I'm looking at my Apache error logs, specifically for any message where it says file does not exist /user/htdocs. Then I'm going to do a parse anchor where I'm going to parse out the name, the error, and the IP address. Let me comment this one out. Let me comment this one out. And let's run this. So again, I'm looking at my Apache error logs. I'm parsing out the IP address. Now, it just so happens these all happen to be the same IP address, right? Some malicious little cretin is trying to hack or whatever. Then what I can do is, of course, I can count these and see how many instances of this I have, assuming I can operate my mouse properly. Come on. Why is it not letting me anchor? There we go. Good. So now I'm counting by my IP. So I have this one IP address there 27 times in the last 15 minutes. This person has tried to access things. Now, in order to, now I may have multiple IP addresses, right? So this could give me a bunch of different IP addresses with a bunch of different count values. And I can send all those back to my parent query if I want to have them look them up. But I want to filter it for only one value, excuse me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use either the top function or the top K function. The difference between top and top K is top K has a rank, but I could have used top here instead of top K. When I do a top K, I see the top, the highest IP address, and I also get a ranking of that IP address. I don't, like I said, I could have used a top command, that would have been fine. But we also have bottom and bottom K rankings as well that you can use. So here I'm specifying that I want the top 1. I could have said I want the top 5 or whatever. Now, in order to make this a subquery, I have to pass back this IP address to my parent query. And the command to do that is called the compose command. Compose. And what do I want to pass back? My IP address. So compose space IP, and then I'm going to type in the word keywords. And I'll explain why I choose to use the word keywords. Now, when I run this, what I see is here's my IP address, and it's in parentheses. It's in a wrapper. I'm going to pass that back to my parent query. Now, you may recall from this lovely slide right here, maybe. There it is. Remember my first line? I had, here's my metadata tag, and here's my keywords. Now, what this keywords denotes here is I want to pass this IP address into the keywords placement of my parent query. So I'm going to take this entire code that's right here, including my compose statement. I'm going to grab it all. I'm going to go back to my parent query. I'm going to add a couple of new lines just to put lines in here. I'm going to paste this code in, and now I need to mark this as a subquery. So the way I mark this as a subquery is subqueries start with a bracket, not a brace, but a bracket, and they end with a bracket. So open bracket, close bracket. And then also right after the open bracket, we put the tag subquery with a colon in it. And that's what we need to do to get this to run. So what's going to happen is the subquery is going to run, find this IP address. We're going to take this IP address, we're going to post it and bring it back over here, just to the right of this line. And now it's going to show me all of my Apache access for that specific IP address. So when I run this, it's going to run my subquery first. It's going to find that IP address, and then it's going to pass it back, and I'm going to see in my Apache access log where that IP address has been going in my Apache environment. That's an example of a subquery. Now, can I have subqueries nested inside of other subqueries? What do you think?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, why not? You're absolutely correct. And as a bonus, if you act right now, down here at the bottom, it talks about visiting the subqueries in our documentation. So I can right click on this, open this up in a new tab, and I can look about how to do subqueries here in our documentation, how to pass more than one value, all kinds of cool stuff in here. Okay, so there you go. It's all in our documentation. Subqueries. All right. Moving on to lab 6, everybody's favorite, the geo lookup operator. Again, there's a link in here. If I right click, open that up in a new tab, it talks about how we have a partnership with a company called Newstar. And we are going to use the lookup command going to this location, which is really Newstar. And we are going to, I didn't mean to do that, but that's okay. I want to try to use my back button, but it's not going to let me. That's Newstar's documentation. But basically what it's going to do is we're going to pass in the IP address. Newstar is going to take that IP address and it's going to provide us a latitude, a longitude, a continent, a country code, a country name, anything that we ask for. So we're going to ask for latitude, we can ask for longitude, we can ask for continent, we can ask for city, state, whatever. Now, in order to generate a Mapbox plot out of this, we need 3 things. We need latitude, we need longitude, and we need count. How we will do the count is we will do a count or an aggregation function, right? That's how we're going to get that. So if I look at my code example here in lab 6, and if I take this lovely code example here, and if I copy it and paste it, Again, I'm looking at my Apache access logs. I am parsing out a field which is called the client IP. We're going to call it the client IP. Then I'm going to take this client IP. I'm going to pass it into Newstar as the IP. This is Newstar, and I want it to give me latitude and longitude. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to comment out these last two lines for just a second to show you something. So when I run this, I am going to get my client IP, my latitude, and my longitude. In order to generate this as a Mapbox plot, I need to also do a count. So I can count by my latitude and longitude. That's going to create my aggregates tab. That's where these icons exist. Because I have latitude and longitude and count, this little icon is enabled. And if I click on that little icon, I see a map and I see my data spewed forth on that map. By the way, I can also sort this. And if I don't specify the sort order, what order is it going to be in? Test question. I don't specify the sort order. What order is it going to put it in?
Better?
Descending. Descending order. I don't specify an order. It puts it in descending order. So you guys should all get that one right. So this is a Mapbox plot brought to us by the company Mapbox. And again, we can, see our data put across this area. By the way, if I double click here on Europe, you can see it starts to break it out across Europe. And I can see where these IP addresses are coming from. Okay. Same across the United States and so forth and so on. I can shrink, collapse, move it around, whatever. That's your Mapbox plot. Okay. Do you have to have both latitude and longitude to generate maps? That's an excellent question. So let me show you. Let me first of all turn this back to my tabular data so I can see my numbers. Let me comment out, if you don't mind here, my latitude longitude portion of this. Right, that's commented out. So now I'm only going to count by my latitude. And you'll notice this button is not enabled. I can click on it all day, nothing's going to happen. So yes, in order to generate a Mapbox plot, I need latitude, longitude, and count. Now, could I also, if I want to, ask for things like country name, region, and then I can count by country name and region. So there we go. Now, do I need country name or region to generate a Mapbox plot? No, I only need latitude, longitude, and count. But maybe I also want to display, besides the map, I want to show them where the stuff is. The city, the zip code, whatever. So that's how we display things. Pretty cool, huh? All right, moving on to lab number 7, calculating averages and moving averages, calculating changes. I'm going to talk about two operators here, the difference operator and the smooth operator. I promise I will not sing the song smooth operator. You should be grateful. I'm going to go in here, grab a new log search tab. I'm going to paste this code in here. Again, what's this code doing? It's going out to my Apache access logs. I'm going to create something here called a time slice. Now this time slice creates buckets for us, right? So if I want to put things inside of 1 minute buckets, I put 1M, 2 minute buckets, 2M. I want to put 5 hour buckets, 5H, right? You can do everything, you can't use years in the time slice. So that's a test question. You cannot use years in a time slice. So this is going to create 1 minute buckets. And since I'm running this for 15 minutes, I'm going to have 15 buckets. Then it's going to count by my time slice, show me how many messages I have by my time slice. And then I'm going to sort my time slice in ascending order. Time slice does not sort automatically. You have to tell it to sort. Or there are some functions that you can use where it will sort it by using those functions. So here I see my time slices in order, in ascending order. Here's my counts. And now when I run the difference operator, and all the command is diff, when I run my difference operator, what it's going to do is it's going to take this number minus this number, give me this number. This number minus this number, give me this number. This number minus this number, give me this number. And if I plot these on a line chart, here is my data, and then here is my difference. Now, you might ask yourself, what's the use case for this? Well, if I'm into inventory management, right? And I'm thinking about, gee, here's my number of COVID patients. It went up, which means my number of available beds went down, okay? My number of COVID patients goes down, then my number of available beds go up. And so I can see a correlation here of what's going on and what the difference is as far as what I'm seeing. That's what the difference operator does. Used for inventory type management and stuff like that. All right. That's your difference operator. If you love the difference operator, you guys will be absolutely out of your socks for the smooth operator. Before I go to the smooth operator, though, let me point something else out. If you want to, with these charts, these line charts, you can click on the settings. And here in the settings, you can change the properties. Maybe you want to use colors of red instead of colors of blue, whatever. You can also go in here and you can also change various properties. Now, I believe Odell probably mentioned yesterday, one of the things you want to do with this tool is to kick the tires, right? Like a car, you want to take it for a test spin. So look at some of these properties and play around. But for example, instead of my difference operator being a line chart, maybe I want to make it a column chart. And instead of using my default axes, Y1 axes, I want to use my Y2 axes. And so now what I'm seeing is here's my values. Here's my differences as columns. My difference numbers are here on the right. My values, my counts are here on the left. So you can play around to display and create the story that you're trying to create to tell the story that you need to tell. I know there's properties in here that you can play with. That's in the settings tab, settings button here. So, and it's only available in the aggregates tab. Okay. Now let's talk about the smooth operator. Copy, paste. Okay. Again, this time we're looking for a status code of 404. We're creating our buckets. We're going to count, but instead of calling it underscore count, we're going to call it error count. That's what this as clause is. We're naming this error count. We want to do it by time slice. Then we're going to sort our time slice ascending. And again, if I run this by commenting out the last line, here's my time slices. Here's my error count, not count, underscore count, it's error count. And then here, if I run my smooth operator, what it's going to do is it's going to take this number here, the first number, divided by 1. Take the first two numbers, add them together, divided by 2. Take the first three numbers, add them together, divided by 3. First four numbers, added together, divided by 4. All the way up to 10. So it's going to take the first 10 numbers, divided by 10. When it gets past 10, it's going to drop the oldest value, grab the next value, again, divide by 10. So if I display this as a chart, again, I can see the peaks and valleys of what's happening here as far as my data goes. But the smooth operator kind of tells me what the running average, the rolling average is. So for example, if this is my cash flow or this is my sales, I see the various spikes up and down, but now I've got a better sense, a truer sense for how my sales figures are doing. So that's rolling average or smooth operator. Any questions? All right, lab 8 and 9 go together. I realize it's now, we're 2 hours into the class. Just bear with me. I'll get this done in about 20 minutes. So in lab 8, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new log search and we're going to look at our friend, the old snort log. So source category equals lab/snort. And if I looked at, say, the last 16 minutes, now again, snort is an appliance that tells us if we've got security issues. And as you can see, I've got 6,000 log messages to go through. I don't want to go through 6,000 log messages over the last 60 minutes. So what I can do is I can invoke the log reduce button. And when I click on the button, all it does is it adds a pipe up here, pipe log reduce. Now what the log reduce is going to do is it's going to create a signatures tab for me. And in this signatures tab, it's going to combine my like messages together based on their structure. So log reduce will combine my like messages together, similar formats. It's going to combine them together. Again, test question. So out of my 6,048 messages, 3,115 are this message. And where I see the stars in here, those stars denote different values. So, but it's all the same basic message, just the values themselves have changed. Now, a couple things. In here, like I said, I can see the total count out of my messages, and it sorts it automatically in descending order to kind of help me out. There's a relevance score. By default, if I leave things alone, it will calculate a relevance score from 0 to 10. But when I investigate this, for example, I look at this config.conf file access, and I realize when I investigate this, that the reason there was this file access occurred was because we were doing a series of upgrades. And so when everybody upgraded their software, it modified the config.conf file. So this really isn't a problem at all. So I can give this thing a thumbs down and it will change its relevance score to 0. So effectively, I can ignore it. Okay. Conversely, I've got here some email address, sensitive data. I can click on this because I realize when I investigated it, it is quite significant. So I want to make it a 10. So I can kind of help my analysts understand where my priorities are. Now, in this signature tab, you'll find that you can go ahead and break down the count. There's a lot of things that you can do. What you cannot do is you cannot delete the signature data. You cannot delete the signature data, okay? So I can view the details of this stuff if I want to, but I can't delete it. Test question. Now back to my messages for a second. Let's say that I'm going through these signatures, and I find that in here there's a message that, this points me back to my messages, and I find a message that's very interesting. And when I look at these messages, I can look either by host, I can look by name, or I can look by category. And if I want to, not only can I look by host, name, and category, and that's a test question, I can also look within host, name, or category. I can look at the surrounding messages that came before this or after this by 1 minute, 5 minute, or 10-minute intervals. So let's say this message right here is really damning and it really tells me what's going on. I can see what happened before it from this host, what happened after it, plus or minus a minute, 5 minutes, or 10 minutes. So it'll make it easy for me to do my investigations, make it fairly quick. So that's log reduce, and that is lab 8. Lab 9, this is a good indicator of where I might have problems. But you know what would be a better indicator? If I could compare time ranges. And that's what log compare does. So if I click on log compare, you'll see it changes my query just a little bit. Again, I'm still looking at my snort logs. This time I'm going to do a log compare time shift minus 24 hours. So what does that mean? That means it went out right now from now and went back 60 minutes and it did a log reduce on it. Then it's going to go back 24 hours to yesterday, same time. It's going to go back 60 minutes. So it's going to do a log reduce on that. Then it's going to compare those two results. So when I compare these two results, you'll see that I have a series of percentages. So not a significant change, not a significant change, not a significant change. I'm not seeing high numbers of percentages here, okay? 42, that might be significant, okay? But now I've got a better sense. I can also, by the way, instead of making this go back a day, maybe I want it to go back a week, 7D. So now when I'm running, I'm comparing it right now, going back 60 minutes, to a week ago, going back 60 minutes. So I'm comparing my Wednesday to Wednesday. And again, I'll see some percentage changes here. Now, one thing also I want to point out to you, let me click on the second page. Some words that you might see. You might see the word new instead of a percentage. The word new means it wasn't there this time shift ago, but it is there now. It's shown up. It wasn't there before, but it's there now. Or I might see the word gone. Gone means it was there originally, but it's gone now. It's no longer showing up now. So you'll see words like gone or new that you can see what's going on. So my log compare lets you and I compare data with other things, okay? Other time frames. That's what my log compare does. And that takes care of, as I said, of lab 8. And that takes care of lab number 9, log compare. And that takes care of, here we go for lab 10. Lab 10, we are going to use the outlier function. So if you don't mind, I'm going to grab this lovely code and I am going to copy it. Now, in this documentation, it points us out to the outlier function. And basically what this is going to do is it's going to calculate our mean and our standard deviations and give us a neat representation of what things look like, right? So it's going to give us a really nifty line chart here of what's happening with a cloud behind it showing me my standard deviation information. And then if I have any data points that's not within my cloud, I'll flag those as red. So that's what this does. And again, the documentation's all there. Blessing, is there a question?
Yes, for the gone, where would the log, like, for example, like the one you showed us, like it was not there, like it's not there anymore. Does that mean someone deleted the log or what happened?
Okay, I didn't catch the first part of your question.
Yeah, when you're showing us the log, you know, you showed us new and you showed us gone.
Yep.
So my concern is for the gone.
Gotcha,
So,
the word's gone. Yeah, I understand now. So the trick is it was there before, but it's not there now. That means it just didn't have a match. That's all. So we did have a match in all these. We can compare and do a percentage. But in some cases, some of these errors did not occur. They occurred before this virus outbound, but it did not occur in this last 24 hours in my current period.
okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Again, thank you for asking. This is all about what you guys are wanting to know, what you guys are, things I'm not making clear. So I appreciate you asking, keep me honest. So back to this lovely outlier function, if you don't mind. Copy it. Create a new query. Actually, let me close up all these other queries. I'm going to close all tabs. Grab my outlier function here. Paste this in. Blessing, there's another question. It's like you're raising your hand. Yeah.
No, please.
Okay, no worries. Thank you. All right. So here I'm again looking at my Apache access codes. I'm looking at my status code of 404. Excuse me. I just did a stupid thing. I accidentally hit my keyboard here. There we go. I'm going to create my time slice of 1 minute buckets. I'm going to make this 60 1-minute buckets, by the way, 60 of them. I'm going to do my count of my status code, and I'm going to call it error count by time slice. So it's going to have the word error count in it. So again, all of this first 3 lines is pretty much stuff that we've done before, counting, time slices, and all that. Now, what the outlier is going to do is it's going to perform some serious math. So the first thing it's going to do is it's going to take, because my window is set to 10, it's going to take my numbers here. It's going to go back 10 data points. And it's going to calculate a mean, and it's going to calculate a standard deviation value. So it's going to go back 10 data points. It's going to calculate the mean and standard deviation. Next data point, again, last day, 10 data points, calculates my mean, my standard deviation, mean, standard deviation, mean, standard deviation. Now, with that standard deviation, my threshold is set for 3, which means I want to go plus or minus 3 standard deviations. So I'm going to take this number, multiply it by this, go plus or minus that, and that's going to give me an upper boundary and a lower boundary. So again, here's my value that I'm going against. Here's my range, my upper and my lower, based on the value of my standard deviations. And then if my number is outside of my upper or lower, by default, it will display for me an outlier. Now, this is easiest to see if I click on a line chart. So here in my line chart, again, I can see my data, my blue line here. I can see my light blue cloud in the background, which is my upper and lower boundaries. And here I can see I've got a red triangle, and there I've got a red triangle. Let me go back to my data. To go back to your data, you click on this table button, and let me scroll down here a little bit and see if I can find what I'm looking for. It's never on the first page. It's a trainer's joke, sorry. So here on the second page, I have a value that's 21. It's above my upper. It's above my upper. It's obviously above my lower. It's outside of my range. So I flag this. Because my consecutive value is equal to 1, if any number is outside, all I need is that one number to be outside, and then I'm going to flag it as an outlier. In some cases, in some operational management classes or production classes, you need to have 2 defects or 3 defects in a row before you start taking down the line and stuff like that. So you can change this consecutive value if you need to denote that I've got to have 2 or 3 of these before I register it as an outlier. Let me go back to my line chart for a second. Let me play around here a little bit. I'm going to change my threshold. Instead of 3 standard deviations, plus or minus 3, I'm going to go plus or minus 2. And when I run that, you'll notice I've got now a fair number more outliers, okay? Now what I want to do is I want to change my consecutive value from 1 to a value of 2. And I now only have 1 outlier. So let's look at this outlier. Let me go back to my table here. As I go through here, right, I had a value here of 26, which is above my upper range. And normally that would be an outlier, but I need to have 2 of those in a row before I flag it as something bad. That's what that consecutive number means. So as I scroll down here I see there's a value of 21, which is above my upper. That's my first value. My next value is 19, which is again above my upper. Now I've got 2 of these in a row. I will mark this and flag it as an outlier. Go back to my line diagram for a second. You might have noticed this number up here is outside of my cloud. And so is this one outside of my cloud. But it takes 2 of these in a row before I start marking this as an outlier. So that's what that consecutive value does. Now, the only one I've still got to talk about here is direction. Direction plus or minus. Let's say that I'm in a manufacturing plant and I'm using this. And I'm looking at my average of manufacturer defects. So I see things that are above average, I see things that are below average. Do I care about below average manufacturing defects? I don't think so. So I can get rid of the minus sign and that will get rid of any outliers below. Or I can get rid of the plus sign and get rid of anything that's above. So you can control what you want to see, plus or minus. That's what direction is. And that is your outlier function. Statistic function that you can use. All right. Takes us to lab 11, the predict operator. And again, there's documentation on the predict operator. Predict operator has 2 modules, or 2 models that it uses, an auto regression model and a linear model. Okay, and depending on how you use the command predict, it will automatically specify which model to use. If I don't specify it, it assumes I'm using the linear regression model. And that's what we're using here. So if I go out here and I grab myself a log search and I paste it in, again, I'm looking at my access code, status code of 404, creating 1-minute buckets. Let me go ahead and create 60 of those. Again, I'm going to count my status code. I'm going to call it error count by time slice. And then when I run this predict operator, what it's going to do is, here's my time slice, here's my values. This error count predicted is really a line. It's a linear expression. And so if I look at the distance, the difference between this minus this is this. This minus this is this. And so this shows me my difference of how off I am. And if I run this as a line, here I can see my various data points, and I can see how my line is sloping. And it looks like it's sloping up. Now, when I look at this, if I'm looking at this is my revenue, I'm probably happy. My revenue is going up. The line is sloping up over time. So therefore we can predict that we're going to have more revenue. If this, however, is my cost, I may not be as happy because again, my costs are also going up. So again, you got to put it in context to what data you're really measuring. And this is, like I said, not the greatest data to play with, right? Maybe what I want to look at is some financial data, or maybe I want to look at, my HR data as far as employee churn, stuff like that. Maybe my sales figure data is, whatever. But that is the predict operator. 2 more labs left. This one is the transaction operator. And this transaction operator is going to use as a log source and something that keeps track of states. So in my log, I've got a cart state, I've got an order ship state, I got a confirmation ship state, shipping information state, and all that. And this query is going to allow us to see when one moves from one state to another state. Okay, so if I add this log search, paste it in. If I change this to a nice healthy period like 3 hours, actually, let's make it 24 hours. When I run this, what the table is going to show me here, my aggregates table. And by the way, here's my log messages. There's my log showing me what's going on in here, whether it's order shipped or what my card or whatever. When I look at my aggregates, I can see from state to state, all the different things that are occurring. Since I'm looking at 24 hours of data, it might take a few seconds for this to run. But what I can also do is I can also look at my sand key diagram. This gives you a sand key diagram. So I can see that in my last 24 hours, 31,193 or 37,784, the query's not done yet, items were put in my cart. Now, in some cases, they were put in my cart where it says loop back. That means it was taken out of my cart, put back in my cart, right? So I'm sitting there going to the grocery store. I like something, I put it in my cart. Maybe my wife comes by and says, you don't need that, takes it out of my cart and puts it back on the shelf. I go back to the shelf, I pull it back into the cart. You have that sort of lovely interface going on. Now, once it's in the cart, we're going to go through the transaction processing, right? We want to, maybe we'll see the shipping information, right? We want to ship it. So out of a lot of those orders, a lot of them still went into shipping. I can see how many of my cart went into shipping, and then from shipping, how far did it go to confirmation and order shipped and all that sort of thing. So I can see how much I'm losing of my transactional business with this sand key diagram. Now, we also have in our Sumo Logic product, as of about 9 months ago, in our observability, we've got another way of looking at transactions that we tend to like a little bit more. This has been with us for a long time, but our transaction operators and stuff that we use, our tracing of service maps that we have in Sumo Logic is another way we look at transactions. But we're not going to talk about that in this class. We talk about this in the observability classes. So here I can see where I've got bottlenecks in my transaction systems. I can open those up in, if I want to, traces, and I can look at a trace to see where that trace is bogging down, where there are errors in that trace, and I can go back and look at my log. So that's another transactional thing, not on the test, nothing you have to worry about, but it is something that we've added to the product. Kumar, is there a question, sir?
Yeah, can you please just show it again how you went to that service map?
Sure. New?
Okay.
Service map.
Oh, new service map. Okay. Same thing, but
yeah. And if I wanted to, I could filter by service and all that fun stuff. But again, I don't want to turn this to an observability class.
Got it.
So yeah, our little developers have been very busy adding new things to the product. So I suspect this lab will be deprecated going forward, but that's another story. The last lab is, you may recall, those of you in yesterday's class, we talked a little bit about how you can create alerts, right? And you can schedule things. You went and clicked on the Save As. But in order to create meaningful alerts, and that's really the key here, there's a blog post here. And if I right click on this and I open this up in a new tab, it's going to take you out to our Sumo Logic public facing website. And it has an article here about creating meaningful alerts. And if you're a company that's going to generate alerts, you want the alerts to be meaningful. What makes an alert meaningful? Two things. One, it's got to be actionable, right? In other words, there's some action we need to take on it. And two, the alert should be directed to somebody. Who are you going to direct them to? So one of the things that we've learned in order to make alerts meaningful, and the whole goal of Lab 13 to create a meaningful alert is this. If I go back to my outlier function, right? Do I want you to be notified if these data points are changing? No. I only care about the outliers, or the red ones. So the moral to the story is, I don't really care about the rest of this. I want to be notified when these are occurring. How do I fix that and say that in my query? What you're going to do is you're going to add a new line, add a pipe, and you're going to add a where clause. And you're going to see a test question that says, you want to make this alert more meaningful. What do you do? And one of the options is you're going to add a where clause. And in my case, what I want to do here is I want to say where error underscore count underscore violation, by the way, I got that column from right here, is greater than 0. So this is going to filter out and only show me my error conditions. So now I only have 6 conditions. That's when I want to be notified. So in order to create a meaningful alert, we recommend that you add a where clause to your query that only discusses when you got problems, whatever that threshold is. Now, again, that's on the test. One little thing I want to mention to you here, under monitoring, we have added about 6 months ago, this monitoring where you can take queries, either log queries or metric queries, and you can put those queries in here. Let me just go ahead and humor me for a second here. We take this query right here. And let me go ahead and do that again. We teach this, by the way, in the admin class, because that's probably who's going to set these up. So I can paste this lovely code here, and when I run it, I can see that I've got certain data, and I can set up conditions to where if I'm missing data over a period of time, I want you to notify me, the system's down, whatever, or set warning levels based on certain values, critical levels on certain values. And not only will it tell me when something goes wrong, it'll also tell me when we recover from that wrong. And then you can decide here how you want to notify folks. Do you want to send an email? Do you want to send things to Datadog? Do you want to send a Slack message? Do you want to create a Teams message? Do you make a webhook in other systems? What do you want to do? And that's how you create these monitors. And like I said, we go into more detail about this in the admin class. But I just wanted you guys just to be aware that some people are like, gee, this monitoring isn't that exciting. And you know what? You're not wrong. You're right. Our new monitors are, I think, a little bit better approach. So, but these we teach in the admin class. We'll also teach it tomorrow in the metric mastery class. Okay. So that takes care of that last lab. What questions have you about the content of this class? Okay. One little thing before I turn you loose on the exam. One little thing. There's a couple of errant little questions in there that I do not like. I do not wish they were in this class. One of them has to do with the Apache app that you all installed yesterday. Okay. So in that Apache app, it's asking you questions about that app that you installed yesterday. Many of you probably don't still have it, couldn't find it, don't care about it. I understand. So when you get to the questions, that asks you to go to the Apache log error analysis dashboard, specifically in the critical errors panel, and it asks you which of the following fields is not there, like refer, right? So here I've got time, web server farm, log level, reason, and count. I don't have refer. When you get to those types of questions, let me know and I will share with you what's going on and I will give you the correct answer. That question should really not be in your exam. I'm sorry it is. Okay. So that's my last comment on that. Now, let's get you to your exams. So again, you're logged into our training environment. I want you all to go into the navigation panel if you need to, go in here, and I want you to log out of our training environment. Why? Because we want to log you. We want you to log into some environment where you're logged in by your name. So you get credit for passing this exam. That's what we want you to do. So you're going to go into your company's Sumo Logic environment. You're going to log in with your credentials and you're going to basically log in from there. Okay. Anybody not have a Sumo Logic environment to play with? Okay, good. So I want you to log into your company's Sumo Logic environment. And then I'm going to close all these up. Don't mind me. Then I want you to click on the Home tab here. And I want you to click on Certification, click on Get Certified. And here under Get Certified, there is the Get Certified where you can take the exam. Click on that. I would encourage you to click on the Search Mastery exam. That's the course that we just had. Okay. Click on the Search Mastery exam. And if you need to, there's a registration button that you can click on to register. And then it says here before you start, yes, this has got 30 questions. You got 60 minutes to complete it. Passing score is 75%. Again, some of the questions are fill in the blanks, matching text, multiple choice, whatever. Here's the big thing. It is an open book, open note exam. And Odell and I are going to be here to help you. So if you get stuck on a question, rather than getting frustrated and all that stuff, ask us. We will gladly help you. Like I said, some of the questions that are asked are not fair questions. So don't hesitate to reach out and ask us, and we will do everything in our power to help you pass. Chad, is there a question, sir? Chad, is there a question? You raised your hand. Okay.
Excuse me, John. I have this message about missing auth cookies. So like if you block third-party cookies, please add the domain in your browser privacy settings. So.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm not sure what, are you saying you're trying to get to the test and you can't?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
So yeah, I have the message missing auth cookies.
Okay. Do me a favor here. Hang on a second. Let me go back here for a second. There is in this Sumo Logic thing, this get support. And if I click on this get support, there is some, you can obviously reach out to our support folks, but on this training portal navigation tip, it talks about some of the issues that people might have. This is just simple navigation. Sorry, this is what I'm looking for. But need help, you can contact support. There is also, but we used to have a thing where you could see certain errors and there are certain ways to fix them, but typically you're going to have to go back to your administrator, your company's administrator, to get them fixed. But my advice to you is open a ticket with support@sumologic.com. If you're having problems trying to access the exam.
Can you hear me now, John?
I can hear you now, sir.
Oh, okay. I have a question on the test about that Apache app.
Okay. Let me hold that question for just a second. I'll answer test questions here in just a minute. Let me get everybody to the test.
All right.
Who else does not have access to be able to take their test? By the way, you don't have to take it right now. If you got 30 minutes left before we're scheduled to be done. If you got a meeting or something scheduled and you want to take it later, that's fine. But I encourage you to take it now while Odell and I are here to answer your questions to help you pass this puppy. Okay. So there is that. Again, as far as the test goes, let me just bear with me one quick second here. I'm going to go through here and just show you a couple of questions. Again, start the test here. When I go in here, here's my counter, my 16-minute counter. As I start to scroll down, it'll automatically, as I start seeing questions, my counter starts to count down. So again, we have kind of results is this going to show me. I'm sure you guys can rationalize that one out. When you use log reduce, what's the following actions do you not take on each of the resulting signatures? I didn't mention you can split, you can edit, you can promote, you cannot delete. You cannot delete. I believe I did mention that you can't delete. And then question number 3, calculate select the sum that calculates. If you got these check boxes, it means there's probably more than one answer. So I want the sum that calculates the total books by box. And again, here's total books by box. I like that one. And then I want to see the sum of my box as size by total books. So some of my size. So those I think are the 2 correct answers, 2 correct choices. Fill in the blank, such and such calculates a rolling average. That was a smooth operator. So I'm just answering some questions here just to show you that when I go to the end of this and I hit next or done, it will tell me, here's my score. It'll tell me the questions I got right, the questions I got wrong. And obviously I got that one wrong about the books, so shame on me. But also don't forget to click the submit button so that your certificate gets added to your profile. Up here in the upper right-hand corner, this is your profile. And here is where you can see all of the exams you've taken. You can see the certificate for the exams. You can even add them to your LinkedIn profile. Okay. So there you go.
On that book question, it's just one answer, right?
There was 2 had a series of check boxes, so I assumed there was more than one answer, but maybe there is only one real good answer there. Maybe I fell into it because of the checkbox thing. So. So, okay. And again, if you don't pass the test, you can always take it again if you want immediately, or take it again tomorrow or whenever you want. Otherwise, like I said, there's a couple test questions I want to warn you about. I'm going to turn my video on here for just a second, though, to say goodbye properly. So again, I want to thank you all for attending. I hope you guys learned a lot. And again, good luck on the exam. We'll be here to help you. Otherwise, I hope to see you in class again real soon. One other thing I wanted to mention to you, I forgot. Let me do this real quick. I feel like I got a commercial here. I apologize. But if we go to the Sumo Logic customer-facing website, and if I go to the little hamburger menu over here, and if I go into resources, and I scroll down here a little bit, I should see the Learn section. And in the Learn section, this is where you can see all of our schedule coming up. So this is where you can see what other classes you might be interested in, and feel free to register. All of our classes are free, my favorite price. So otherwise, folks, thank you very much. I am going to do one other thing here. I'm going to stop my recording.